Welcome to Inside Industry. I'm Sagar Parekh, a second-year pharmacy student at UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. Today, we're honored to have Dr. Sagar Parekh, a product marketing manager in rheumatology at the Janssen Pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson. Sagar is also the founder of Coded Like a Capsule platform, which has amassed over 21,000 followers on Instagram. And Sagar also completed his PharmD at the Ernest School of Pharmacy at Rutgers University in 2021. So thanks for being here today, Sagar.
Thanks for having me, Ravi. I appreciate it. I'm excited to chat through your questions and kind of talk a little bit more about myself.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for you to be on this as well. And you've had a very unique background, especially being someone who has a voice in pharmacy and as many students look up to you. So I guess going straight into it, do you mind describing kind of what your career journey has been so far, all the way from pharmacy school to I guess where you're at now?
Yeah, of course. So I started, as you mentioned, I went to pharmacy school at Rutgers. So I did the 6 year pharmacy program there. Um, Early on, I think a lot of pharmacy students generally work in a pharmacy. So I got a job at a Stop and Shop pharmacy. It's like a grocery store. So I worked there for around like 3 to 4 years. But when I was in school, I joined a pharmaceutical fraternity, so Alpha Zeta Omega. I was kind of like, okay, I want to learn about what people are doing in pharmacy, and a
Yeah.
lot of people within that fraternity did a lot of different things. One of those being fellowships and residencies. So what ended up happening was my first year of pharmacy school, I actually got an internship at Bayer. So I
Yeah.
did a pharmacovigilance drug safety internship, and this is like an actual story of like, now I work in marketing, but I was doing
Yeah.
drug safety, nothing against it. Very important field. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I remember I was like walking through the halls of the company and I was with my manager, and there was like a room full of people just laughing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of commotion coming, and then my manager, I was like, "Oh, what's going on in there?" And then my manager was like, "It's probably marketing in there." So I was like, "Damn, that sounds pretty." Like I'm not laughing like that during my job. So I ended up figuring out who was doing marketing at Bayer, and it turns out there's marketing fellows there.
Yeah.
So that was like the first batch of marketing people that were there. So I started meeting them, networking, learning about what they did, and I actually thought it was very cool. So fast forward a few years, I ended up doing rotations. So I got rotations in marketing within a
Yeah.
marketing agency. And then I also did regulatory ad promo at Bayer as a rotation because
Yeah.
that fits in with marketing and you review marketing pieces. But in between all of that, to kind of make sure I like kind of padded my knowledge in marketing, Rutgers offers a pharmaceutical marketing course, like one of them.
Yeah.
So I took that just to kind of say that, I'm trying to learn a little bit more about it. And then
Yeah.
I think that was just streamlined me forward. But I think the biggest part of the puzzle is kind of what you spoke about with my social media stuff. So in between all of that, I was documenting my pharmaceutical journey via vlogs, and I was also creating social media content more so on the humor side. Um, and nobody really was doing that in pharmacy. I used
Yeah.
to watch on YouTube. There was a lot of med school folks doing
Right.
it, but nobody in pharmacy school. So that took off. And I kind of just built the brand Coded Like a Capsule. So by the time fellowship season came, I knew I wanted to do marketing. I kind of compiled all my personal experiences.
Yeah.
Ended up getting a brand marketing position, and now finished my fellowship, and I just work as a product manager for patient marketing.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's really interesting what you brought up with I feel like everyone comes into pharmacy school with some degree of what they want to do, or maybe they don't, and you kind of get exposed to something, and you're like, damn, like that isn't really what I want to do. And then but you see something very like you're able to laterally network, you're able to
Yeah,
do that with the marketing team and then kind of get your foot in the door there, which I think is really important. I kind of figured that out when I went to Duke and I realized, oh wow, I don't want to do
yeah,
clinical whatsoever. And then it was just like, wow, but medical affairs is really, really interesting. And I was able to network myself into there.
yeah.
So I think that's really valuable. And you kind of mentioned briefly about your brand, but I mean, tell me more about Coded Like a Capsule and kind of what the intention of that platform was then and how it's evolved over time. Because I noticed on your old LinkedIn pages, like, or you had it was meant for like I think like students of PharmDs to kind of network, and you had like a
Yeah,
little US map, and you had
yeah,
PharmDs and students there.
yeah. It was pretty sick. So as I mentioned, I started it because there was nobody doing it in pharmacy. So I started off with YouTube vlogs.
Yeah.
And I watched a lot of like Casey Neistat. I still watch a lot of YouTube, so that was like where I got the initial idea that I wanted to start creating. And plus, I thought it would be fun documenting my
Yeah.
college experience at Rutgers, so I started doing that. Um, it was all pharmacy related, and a big part of it was just making pharmacy humor. And then people started
Yeah.
reaching more out to me to get advice and stuff about pharmacy. Um, and then I liked what I had going on in social media, but knowing I was going to apply to fellowships, I needed to kind of ensure it was still professional.
Yeah.
And there's two ways that I did that was I partnered up with a drink brand called Prickly. So I had a couple of friends, one from my fraternity who graduated, worked in marketing,
Yeah.
who partnered with his friends who were also PharmDs, and they created a brand. And they wanted to kind of bring more into their brand and kind of sponsor different things. So they sponsored me to do like live interviews with pharmacy industry professionals, and then
Yeah.
people could watch the interview while I was interviewing. So like I did that for like 6 weeks straight, where we interviewed every single part of PharmDs, like so it was reg, marketing, medical affairs, all
Yeah.
those. So that was one part. But then I remember I thought about it. I was like, okay, I have a lot of PharmD followers and I have a good network. What if I built a networking site just for pharmacy?
Yeah.
So that's where I built codelikeacapsule.com, and I had like one section for pharmacy students at all different pharmacy schools, and then
Yeah.
one section for PharmDs who are doing all different sorts of careers. Uh, it worked great in a sense of like for that year, but
Yeah.
the problem that happens is it has to get updated really frequently because people change jobs, people change years in their pharmacy school.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's like a lot of logistics and a lot of reaching out, and I had that going for like a year or two, but the cost to keep it up with like the amount of people who were visiting, it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So that's where it was like, okay, good idea, but I think LinkedIn is where people are mainly going. Like it's so easy to search people on LinkedIn and find different things
Yeah.
that like maybe this site isn't going to be utilized that much. Um, but I think it was a good learning lesson, but it was also a really great project because I did this during COVID. So I had a lot of time on my hands to kind of go
Yeah.
on my, like, reach out to a bunch of people. Um, so yeah, so that was like a tie in between my professional and social media. But
Yeah.
as you know, my content's kind of a lot different now. So after TikTok came out, I
Yeah.
started posting a lot more like South Asian stuff. Um, that kind of blew up, and that really got me a larger following because it was very like Indian concentrated and very
I like it.
relatable. Um, and then once I started my fellowship and worked in a corporate setting, I transitioned out of pharmacy content into corporate content. So
Yeah.
there's been like a lot more different vibes going on as time goes on, and I'm sure it's going to keep changing depending on what my
Yeah.
life looks like. Um, but overall, it's just been pretty cool because even though I don't really post pharmacy content anymore, it's still relevant because people still reach out to me about
Yeah.
pharmacy. They'll watch one of my videos, go on my profile, and then be surprised that I have PharmD in there because my work
Yeah.
is reflective of that.
No, I think that's really cool. And yeah, when I messaged you on LinkedIn initially, I went through all of your old reels and then I went down through all your tag posts on Coded Like a Capsule. I even
Yeah.
found like videos of when you were a student and started up with your whole platform. I thought that was really cool. I mean, it was very pharmacy heavy content and it's kind of transitioned now, like you said, into more South Asian content and
Mhm.
more gym. I've noticed a lot more gym lately.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big part. It's so funny because I think I do a lot more different stuff, but it's basically I think like people are often surprised. They're like, "Dude, you're exactly how you act on like how I am
Yeah.
via my because a lot of it is just me. It's just kind of personified and maybe exaggerated a little bit, but it's pretty much who I
Well, that's what most people have told me when I've had the opportunity to say like, oh, I'm hoping
am.
to get him on a podcast. They're like, he is exactly as he is on his videos.
Yeah,
And there's always some degree where you, especially with, I mean, pharmacy, PharmD in, the influencer platforms like hasn't really been tapped into other than you. I mean, I think it's very saturated on the LinkedIn platform, but
yeah,
I mean, apart from LinkedIn, like there's really nothing on Instagram. There's really nothing on, TikTok. And you're one of those that pioneered that. And there I was like, there's
yeah.
no way Sagar's like this nice of a person. Like
Dude,
but
I honestly said like I don't get like there should be more people making funny farm school content because I feel like even if you went on my page and copied every video, that would still be pretty funny to like
it'll
remake
blow
and
up.
stuff. And it's just like there's a lot of pharmacy school specific things that are very like
Yeah.
it's just fun to make. So I'm surprised there hasn't been too I haven't run into too many farm student accounts.
Yeah.
But I definitely think there is a space for it.
Did you guys have OSCEs in
Yeah,
see, I've always seen OSCE videos from the med schools, but I've never seen any in
yeah,
pharmacy. And I was like, that's something that could easily be tapped into.
easily. I don't know if ours was recorded. Or
Yeah.
no, they were recorded. Yeah, they were because
Ours
it was.
are, they're bad.
But yeah, like I even think about that. Like there's a lot of missed opportunities that I could have probably made content out of in pharmacy school, but the hard part was I was busy studying sometimes, so like I
Yeah.
wasn't really like creating as much.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes on my next question. Is like, right, you talked about how there's a lot of content you could have used. And I mean, and you talked about professionalism, but also like, how did you market that then, right? When you're like applying internships and fellowships, you're like, I had this site where not only am I like networking and actively like helping students with PharmD's network, but I also provide like humor and content. Like, how did you
Yeah,
use that to your advantage?
yeah. I think I mentioned both sides because I kind of saw it like if a company thought it was unprofessional, well then that's probably not a company I'm gonna be at because
Yeah.
I don't plan on stopping my social media content. But
Yeah.
like I think I did pitch both sides because I didn't want it to just be like, oh, this guy just makes funny videos and this guy
Right.
actually adds value. And I kind of quantified it because it was like I was mentoring a lot of pharmacy students. Like every week I would have a new pharmacy. Like, I would like try to like
Yeah.
put it in that way. But I think what they enjoyed and I think the relevancy was more so like because I was applying to marketing and I was marketing my brand and doing all that,
Yeah.
they knew like I had some sort of creativity and like
Right.
passion for business, which helps a lot when you're interviewing for marketing positions specifically.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And no, I think that's very valid. And I didn't see it, but I mean, do you have an MBA? I don't, because I know,
No, I don't have an MBA. So in the fellowship programs, at
yeah,
least for Rutgers, you can get an MBA while you're doing your fellowship and you get it at like a lower cost. You have to pay
yeah,
taxes on your classes, but you basically get like your MBA for free. Well, not for free. You obviously pay for it, but it's not as much as what
yeah,
it would be flat out. Um, I do think I'm gonna get my MBA, but I'm gonna wait it out a little bit. I kind of want to get it from like MBAs, I didn't think it would be too much value in marketing if I got it right now. I
yeah.
think it's more valuable after years of experience and then you get it from like a top tech
Okay,
school or something. So
yeah,
like that's kind of why I didn't do it. Maybe I don't need it, but I think if I want to go really high up, I think
yeah.
it would be a good decision for me to get it at.
Do you think then, and I agree with you, and that's kind of where my headspace was with UNC. I mean, we have it where you do your first 2 years of pharmacy school, and then you have your MBA year or your MPH year,
Yeah,
and then you do your last 2 years, so it'd be 5 years, and then go do whatever you want to do. But for PharmDs wanting to go in that marketing space, commercial market access, whatnot, do you find it a bit more difficult for PharmDs to kind of tap in there, or how do you feel like you're able to leverage your experiences, right? Apart from coded like a capsule, how are you able to leverage the PharmD, I guess, to your advantage without, the MBA? Because that's so commonly talked about. Oh, you need the MBA for marketing in that space.
yeah. So I think the PharmD is like if I think about it, because I came through the PharmD fellowship program, so like that you need a PharmD, right? But
Yeah,
like say I'm applying externally to different companies and how I still leverage my PharmD. One, it's like proof of that you can understand science and the
right.
concepts of marketing. And easily like when you're interviewing, you can understand like drugs and how they work. So that's one way, but also just having a doctorate degree, like a professional doctorate degree, accounts for like some job postings will have like you need an advanced science degree, right?
Yeah,
So that's where if you want to go consulting in areas like that, that's where you need a PharmD or something that's like
yeah,
concentrated. Um, as you move up, like I don't think it's like they're gonna hire you because you have PharmD because there are a lot more PharmDs in industry now that
yeah,
have a lot of experience. But I think it's that extra addition to be like I have a professional doctorate degree
right.
based in sciences and you understand like even if you may not know as much anymore as you go through, it still shows some sort of understanding. So I think that's how you just carry it with you. But I think your actions within your career in marketing
Yeah.
will speak heavier more than your degree as you move on.
No, I agree. And Just to, yeah, so it's more so about clear or like leveraging your experiences and
Yeah,
the significance behind that degree rather than the actual just title behind it.
exactly. That's how I would do it. And it's just nice to have,
Yeah.
honestly.
No, that's awesome. And I guess my question after that, or kind of going off of that is, as a pharmacist right now, and you don't have to go into specifics, but just generally, how do you see pharmacists in that marketing space like make impacts, on these products you guys are putting out or, therapies? How are you guys making like an impact?
Yeah, I think one of the cool parts about fellowship programs or just industry in general, you'll start noticing there's a lot more PharmDs in many different places.
Yeah.
So there's one PharmDs who regulate clinical trial, who like help set up all the clinical development, clinical
Yeah.
trials. So that's an important part. But then you'll see PharmDs like myself in marketing. And then like the cool part about marketing is depending on where you're at, if you understand the drug, you understand how to position it, then you
Yeah.
create messaging of your product. So like a good mentor of mine who was one of the first sort of commercial fellows
Yeah.
through Rutgers. Now he's like a sales director.
Oh, nice.
Um, he like understood not only the drug, but he also understood like the development, clinical trials, everything. So
Yeah.
he was able to lead like entire marketing teams and like teach it to them. Like here's and that's based off his like pharmacy knowledge, right? Like
Yeah.
he just kept it going and he understood it. So that was cool to see. But then like you'll see medical affairs, like
Yeah.
those areas like MSLs, they'll obviously use their PharmDs to kind of teach and educate on the
Yeah.
product. But like you'll like I think one of the most like the thing about PharmDs I think it's underrated is you have like a high capacity to understand complex knowledge and a lot of it because
Yeah.
you study so much throughout pharmacy school that like if you give yourself like right now you're learning so many drugs, but if someone was like learn everything on this one drug, you'll be like, dude, that's a walk in the park. I could do this in like 3 days and like know everything about it, right? Like so like
Yeah.
that's where you have advanced knowledge and a lot of PharmDs I think are just good people in terms of learning a lot and then working with a bigger team. So they kind of fit into the process quite well.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I think the value add is just through their knowledge and then their constant learning.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really important. And that's something I've seen even on rotation is like something that, I didn't know or know a certain disease state, but being able to just translate what I've done already in school and just kind of pull the information out and being able to like, all right, they've given me like 2 hours and I have to go over lunch and write
Yeah.
a paper on this and present it back to my preceptors. I think those skills are very, they can be translated very easily in a professional world. And
Yeah. I
uh
think that's like a good thing, right? Like what you mentioned is like pulling the right information. Like you going through that pharmacy, you're required to do so much research and like look into things
yeah,
that like that in itself, like throughout your entire job, you're not gonna know everything, but if you can adequately just go about and like look it up and then ask the right question,
yeah,
that's like big, like a big improvement. Whereas like maybe other degrees were a little bit easier to get and you never really had to do stuff like that. So you're not used to that process.
yeah.
But like with how complex pharmacy is, it's like you have to do that. So you just get used to kind of digging deep on information.
That's kind of how I felt like through my curriculum too. It's like even when I'm like preparing for exams, I'm like, all right, well, I know like in a clinical setting or in a like industry setting, like if they ask me this question, I know where to go and find it or
Yeah.
whatnot. But like I don't know it off the top of my head, and I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. But I can go find it. I think a lot of students like stress out about like I need to know it all. It needs to just
Yeah.
sit in my brain. And I think that's hard. Like I can't do that, but I know where
No.
to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a great test taker. So I was like, I mean, I felt the same way,
Yeah.
but like, I think it matters on your career. Like, if you're a resident or somebody that like has immediate
Yeah.
knowledge, then yeah, you should probably know that. But like, for people who work it for companies and stuff, like if you do consulting, you have time to like look up stuff and figure it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess that kind of goes into my, another question of mine, but that's, you know, when you transition from pharmacy school to your fellowship, did you feel like the pharmacy school directly prepared you for the intern, for the fellowship and like were your more so your internships or kind of what prepared you the most and how were you able to draw back on, your foundational like studies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I think when I started my fellowship, I don't think I learned too much from pharmacy school that was like, here's how you work in a team work in a corporate setting. But I
Yeah.
do think internships helped understand that because I was
Yeah.
already in the industry, so I knew like even like things like setting up one-on-ones and like meetings, like those are like little nuances that you kind of already like
Yeah.
learn, or like you're like, if I don't know something, like you can't do all the work on your own, so you have to reach out to a bunch of people.
That's right.
So that's why I think internships are valuable. Like even though they're hard to get, you do learn so much of just business culture and corporate
Yeah.
culture, and that helps you a lot. Um, in terms of pharmacy school, like yeah, the drug knowledge and everything that can help. Um, but I think the biggest thing probably would be like the intake of information that pharmacy school may have help with.
Yeah.
Um, but like my honest opinion on a lot of careers is if you give anyone enough time, they could probably pick up on it. Like
Yeah.
other than like surgery and like
Right.
advanced careers, but if you give them like a business career or like a corporate job or like something where you kind of like learning starting fresh, like there's no like exact rule book.
Yeah.
I think most people can kind of pick up on it, but the bigger problem is like how long it takes you. Like maybe it
Yeah.
took me like 3 months, 6 months, but it might take someone else like 3 years, but there's not 3 years there for
Right.
someone to pick that up, right? So I think it's mainly just a process of like knowing certain things. Help
Yeah.
you.
No, I agree. And I feel like that's kind of how pharmacy school kind of prepares us is to just, like you said, intake that information quickly and just
Yeah,
learning how to like categorize it and then just give it out at the right time. I
right.
think
And even like even the smallest things, man. Like I used to like when I work in the industry, sometimes like, if you're having a rough day, you just think to yourself, like I used to stand in a pharmacy for 8 to 12 hours, like deal with people's like so many problems, them yelling
yeah.
at you, like you just like tired as hell. But, like now I get to, work from my computer, like meet with people, like
Yeah.
it's a little bit different. So you once you get that perspective, it makes it feel a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of how I figured out like maybe clinical wasn't for me because there's just a lot at once. Like my brain was a little bit too overstimulated, and I kind of like that more controlled environment where I could, have those coffee chats with who I need to have those coffee chats with, and just being able
Yep.
to work it, home in silence or working in work, in silence or working with others. Like there's a lot more flexibility with how you kind of want to you kind of curate your experience in the industry, in my opinion. And right, that's different. I have a lot of friends that are clinical and
Yeah.
or retail, and for them it's great, right? Like they are meant for it. I'm not. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
more of a talker, like I just like to talk and just, network and learn more through the
Yeah,
industry.
exactly. I think there's no right answer. Like it's whoever you are as a person, whatever you want to do. Some people like the clinical side, maybe they'll end up in industry a little bit
Yeah.
later. Like it's all up to the person. But I think the earlier you find out, the more targeted you could be in your approach to making yourself like the best candidate for any position, right? Um, so it's more so self-awareness of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess that goes to my next question too, and you kind of got to it, but like for pharmacy students interested in commercial, right? There's many routes. I'm sure you know that. And, when you're approaching graduation, um, whether you're in the MBA program, whether you're not, like how did you weigh your options of what you want to do and what space in the commercial route like did you want to go to? And then what fellowships and how did you differentiate those fellowships?
Yeah. So, first you have to like figure out like what type of fellowship you want to do. Like, do you want to do a marketing one, medical affairs, whatever. But for me, specifically, is marketing, so I knew that.
Yep.
And then I basically, since it was COVID year,
Yeah.
and even now, I think you have so much flexibility because before mid-year process used to be like you go there in person and apply to everything, but
Yeah.
now it's like you could just submit online, right? So I kind of looked up the biggest programs like MCPHS,
Yeah.
Northeastern, Rutgers, what independent ones there were, so like Eli Lilly, Seattle, CGen, Nova Nordis, like anything under the sun that looked relatively like a reputable pharma company,
Right.
I applied to. That's like how I did it.
Yeah.
And like that, it makes it easier nowadays because it is virtual.
Yeah.
So you have a couple interviews virtual. Maybe you have to go somewhere now in person for final rounds.
Yeah.
But I think once you get into like the process of interviewing, you start getting a gist of how companies are based on who interviews you and the vibe of the interview. Um, for fellowship, I think you want to take what you can get. Like it's very hard
Yeah.
to get multiple offers. Like it's not that common. Um, but if you're a top candidate, you kind of get to the final rounds of a lot of different companies. But
Yeah.
then what it comes down to for a lot of people is the pay is generally the same. So that doesn't even like come into like
Right.
question that much. But mostly what it comes down to people is like which companies they vibe with and then location. Because
Yeah.
like if you're from New Jersey and you don't want to necessarily leave because you may want to stay at home or like be with your
Yeah.
because like you're not making as much, you're like, okay, well if I get New Jersey versus Boston, I probably will stay in New Jersey.
Jersey.
Um, and then the other places people look at is like the size and the reputation of the company.
Yeah.
So like, do you want to go big pharma or biotech, right?
Right.
Like, like that. So for me, honestly really like the Boston biotech scene.
Yeah.
Um, that was like one of my top like options as well.
There's a lot of
Uh,
growth there.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's like pretty cool. Um, but for me, I I think like I was like maybe later in my life, like I would go somewhere like in that direction. But for now, like it seems interesting. But J&J was my top because of just I knew like the vibes of people there and like I could
Yeah.
talk to people who were there. But then the other half of it is kind of selfish of me, but like I knew it was in Pennsylvania, and even if I got that, I would be able to like move out of my house because like it wouldn't be in a commutable distance, right? So like that was like the other half where I was like, yeah, I get to explore somewhere new, but it's not too far.
Yeah.
Um, so it ended up working out for me.
Awesome.
And it was a launch product, right? So
Yeah.
that's the other consideration, what product you're going to be on. So I got to go on a new product. So it was all like falling into place. But
Yeah.
if none of that worked out, if none of the fellowship stuff worked out, um, I was still ready to go into consulting as well. So I probably would have just applied to consulting.
No, that's really cool. And I feel like I've talked to a couple fourth years about this too and a couple fellows and they all have the same thing, mass supply and just coffee chat with as many fellows as you
Yeah,
can and just network. I feel like that fourth year is just for you to just apply network, and then you kind of hope you get what you get and then you just take it.
exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of like putting yourself out there. Um, I think a lot of it is like timing too. I always tell people think about like reaching out to people a little bit ahead of time
Yeah.
so that you could reach out to them like one more time before applying. So
Right.
that way it doesn't seem like you're just reaching out to them right at application time, like you're
Right.
keeping in touch with them throughout. Um, so that's what I generally recommend. But yeah, man, I hopped on so many phone calls, talked to so many people. That's just like the process of it though.
Yeah. No, I think that's very valuable. And like, I mean, even when it came to like when I realized I was going to go or had the interest for industry rather than clinical or retail,
Yeah,
all I did this past summer, because I had rotation, was just blind message people on LinkedIn. Like, let's just
yeah,
spend 30 minutes. Let's just chat. I'd like to learn more about your career. Let's talk about
yep,
kind of how you got into that space. And I feel like it's very valuable because they'll remember you, and you never know when you're applying for a fellowship or internship. Like I'm in the internship process right now, and it's just
yeah,
mass apply. Like it's just apply, 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 meet with the recruiters. And I think that's something that's not necessarily spoken about. I think a lot of pharmacy students have noticed they just mass apply, but they never reach out to the recruiters or they never reach out to the,
mhm,
previous interns. And then there's so many applications, so you just kind of get lost into it. But if you just ask and you meet with them, like your app may just be pulled out of that pile, you know?
yeah. There's I don't know if you follow this. There's some Indian. He's like a half Indian, half I think Caucasian guy. His name's Sahil Boom. Do you
I
follow
think
him
I
on
do.
Instagram?
Yeah.
Sahil Boom. I think he literally just posted something. I think he said, what was it called? It's like closed mouths don't get fed. I think
Yeah.
that's what like you just have sometimes you just have to ask for
Yeah.
things. Like no one like if you don't ask then nobody really knows what you want. So like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to kind of open up and like be like guess more like assertive in terms of
Yeah.
what you want and who you want to speak to. So like you have to do.
Yeah, I spoke with someone at Johnson and Johnson actually a couple of weeks ago
Uh-huh.
in their HEOR department and in their oncology space, and at the end of the talk he was just like, so what do you want? Like
Yeah,
what do you want out of this? And I was like, well, I'll be frank with you, I'd really like an internship, and these are the ones I've already looked in your career page that I'm interested in, and yada
yeah,
yada yada, this is where I can bring to the table. And I feel like just having that small like 2 minutes right there like that, I think is very valuable instead of just applying to it, not asking.
Yeah, that's great, right? Like like it's one thing you tell them what you want, and then you just pair it with why you'd be a good fit, and then like that's all you can do, right? They're not gonna
Yeah.
get mad at you for doing that because that's what you're supposed to do. It's just that honestly helps you stand out, right, in
Yep.
between a crowd of people that are gonna apply for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I guess my final question before I let you go, because I know you're very busy, some content you sure you have to do. But before you go, if you could give just one piece of advice to, pharmacists, pharmacy students, anyone pursuing, a career in industry, maybe even to marketing, or maybe even to like creating their own brand, it's up to you. Any advice you'd want to give?
Yeah, I guess I would say do it if you want. Like, don't do it because it seems like the right thing to do, but do it
Yeah,
because you have a passion for it, and then be okay with the assumption that it may take years before anyone even cares about it.
yeah,
But I would say give yourself time. Like, don't quit too early because I think that's what a lot of people that happens to a lot of people. I know a lot of people reach out to me like, I want to create this pharmacy page. There's
yeah,
not that many followers. Like that's like what happens.
yeah,
Like I just tell people like if you don't continue, like I was creating for like a year or two before anyone watched anything. So
yeah.
it just takes time.
No, I could not agree more. And I guess are you gonna tap into the YouTube side of things, or are you gonna stick to TikTok and Instagram?
Might try again on YouTube, but I'll just have to figure out the process for that first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Sagar. I really
Appreciate it.
appreciate your time here on Inside Industry. On behalf of all the pharmacy students and pharmacists that listen to this podcast, I can say that we all appreciate your time and your insights. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, man.